Hello, everybody, and welcome to the season finale for Loki Season 2. So, I haven't watched this episode. It came out yesterday on Thursday. I stayed completely off of social media. I stayed away from anything that could possibly spoil anything for the ending. And I'm now going to watch it live while trying to commentate and give my thoughts, feelings, ideas, theories, and we'll see how this goes. Because I haven't done this for any of the other episodes in Loki Season 1 or Season 2. All of those ones I had watched previously at least once, and then I just rewatch again while kind of talking over it. Even though anybody listening, they can't hear the actual episode, you'll hear me just talking while I'm watching it. So for all of those, I kind of already had an idea of what I wanted to talk about at any individual scene, and I had some time to think about it, and to think about stuff that I found interesting, or little hints at stuff, or any ideas I had, any theories I had, that kind of thing. But this time, I haven't watched this episode at all. I haven't seen anything about this episode anywhere. And it only came out yesterday, so I'm going to watch this live. And while I'm watching it, hopefully not too many pauses, but probably I'll pause a whole bunch and say whatever I'm thinking while I'm actually watching it. So it'll be more first reaction type stuff. And maybe I might need to pause in between to just think about what I've just seen or what I predict happening later in the episode. But hopefully, this is going to be an amazing episode. Every episode so far, I think, has been like incredible. Hopefully, this is the same. And we'll see how that goes. So it says that the episode is 56 minutes, and I'll still be playing it kind of fast. It shouldn't matter. I play almost everything at slightly faster speed, and it doesn't really take away from anything usually. So let's start. So starting again with the previously on, and we get to see Loki talking. Most of these scenes are just Loki. Of course, the series is called Loki, so I expect a lot more with Loki finishing this, especially since the last episode mainly focused in on him specifically and him fixing what happened with the loom. So we'll see what happens from the last episode when he's figured out how to use his time slipping to go back. And that's exactly where the preview ends. Marvel Studios. Oh, this is interesting. We're zooming into the Marvel Studios, and I think it's playing backwards. That's cool. So maybe I was right when I said on the previous episode that he'll have to go back further and further. Maybe that's a hint at that. I guess we'll see. The music is epic, though. And we're seeing that walkway towards the little thing that launches stuff towards the loom. And I guess the time radiation. And we're able to hear them talking, and Loki just is about to pop in. He shouldn't have popped in yet, because he pops in while they're both looking straight down. Yep, there it is. He pops in. A different version of him. And he immediately goes to try to get Timely out. But they don't. He's just watching from above. So he's already seen this play out, and he's been standing in that exact same spot before. The door's open, Timely tries to run out, and then he gets spaghettified. Though, in this instance, I didn't mention this in the previous episode, when Timely gets spaghettified, he screams, but nobody else does. I don't think we've heard anybody else scream. This is smart. He asks Obi what we should have done differently. And he says we took too long. I had to go back a little bit to hear that, because I was talking over it. So again, faster. So he tries to speed it up by, like, what? Like a few seconds? Let's go faster this time. It's not gonna work as Groundhog Day. I knew it. I knew they were gonna play at this. And back again. And it's happening again, isn't it? Faster this time. Nope, doesn't work. Earlier. Oh, wow. He goes all the way back there. And they're completely at a loss. It's like, what's happening? I wasted time, and now time's wasting me. Yeah, I was right. I was absolutely right. It's not working. He'll keep trying to go back further and further. And it'll still happen again and again. Oh, way back to when they were introduced. Timely and Ouroboros. It was so funny seeing Miss Minutes' reaction. And he's just skipping ahead, saying everybody else's lines. You did. You will. He'll volunteer. So it makes sense. He's the one who has to go. It looks like Mobius, but it's actually Victor Timely. He has to go fast. Fuck, fast. I love this. It's actually Groundhog Day, and I really do like it. And he knows that he has it in there. He knows what it is. I don't recall if they ever explained what that was. How long will it take him to know everything Obi knows about mechanics, physics, and engineering? So he'll just go through this again and again and again. This is brilliant. This is exactly Groundhog Day. Decades. It will take him decades. So he actually does it for centuries. That's insane. Which means he can go back far enough and do it all himself. And he's probably perfected every time he's gone around and tried different iterations on exactly what to say and what would work to get everybody to listen and follow along. And this almost seems like exactly what I was saying. I'm gonna pause here, like 8 minutes in. This seems almost exactly like what I was saying for He Who Remains. Whichever Kang ends up being He Who Remains is trapped in this crazy time loop, almost exactly like Loki is, where he's changing slight things every so often, every time he comes back, so he knows everything that could possibly happen from beginning to end of his story. And he's trying to find a way to change his story, either to get him out of this time loop or to do something else. So I'm thinking that this is almost like a mini version that Loki's put himself in of that time loop, where he's stuck having the loom melt down and everything be destroyed. So right before, I guess, he gets destroyed, he has the power to go back and keep trying different iterations. And because he needs to get everything happening quicker, he just needs to do it all himself to skip all everybody, talking to one another and taking forever to figure each piece out. And then by the time they get to the point, it's already too late. It's far too late at that point. So there's also another problem that he hasn't encountered yet. And I don't know if they'll show this, but the episode's only 8 minutes in, so I'm guessing that later in the episode we'll see this. Because I'm thinking my prediction is correct, that he's going to keep trying, and no matter how far back he goes, it doesn't work. So what I'm thinking is going to happen is he'll have to... The upper limit is Victor Timely himself. So he'll have to go far enough back until he just grabs Timely from some point in time and rushes him all the way in here. But maybe even that isn't good enough. And I don't know how much further back he can go, but the upper limit would be when Timely first invents the perfected version of whatever the device is that they need, the multiplier device, to go into the... Actually, I think it's called something else. It goes into that device. Either way, when he first invents that device, the earliest Loki can hop in, grab that device, and get back to the TVA is the upper limit. Unless Loki invents one himself and learns from Victor Timely how to invent something like that, then goes back as far as he needs to, invents the component that Obi invented if at that point it's still not far enough back, and then try to use that. But the other upper limit that I talked about in the previous episode is Loki himself having the time slipping in the beginning, where Mobius needed to go down that walkway and anchor him to pull him out of the fragmented time or whatever. That might be Loki's personal upper limit, where he may not be able to time slip before that. No, but that doesn't make sense, because I'm pretty sure he time slips far, far back into the TVA's past. But that was during his time sickness issue, where supposedly everything that he did was to fix that time sickness. So if he has a different version of that time sickness now, or the time slipping issue now, allowing him to slip back into himself, then maybe there... I don't think we've seen him able to time slip within the TVA before he fixes his time slipping in the TVA. So that could be a potential upper limit to how far back he goes. At least within the TVA. But then... I don't know. I don't know how you would play this. Because technically, if that's the upper limit for where he has to time slip with his whole body, the whole time slipping thing is an issue, because now he's time slipping within himself, and there's not two of him at this point in time. And up to a certain point, he had been time slipping where he would meet himself. But now he's not. He's not meeting himself anymore. So it's a different version of the time slipping he's doing. So if he's able to go back to that previous version, where there could be two of him at the same time, then it doesn't matter. He can go any when he wants, within or outside of the TVA. And that could allow him to fix the issue before he was even fixed of his time slipping. Or even before that. before Miss Minutes leaves, before any of that stuff happens. So it's possible he could fix it that way himself, inventing all the things he would need himself to be able to do that. Go back far enough, giving yourself enough time to have all the inventions in place and ready to go the moment that you need to do that. And then just hopping forward, doing what you need to do, then disappearing again. Or then just living your life until the other you hops back and does everything that he was supposed to do. And then you just pop out from somewhere and it's like, okay, everything's solved, everything's done. So, though I don't necessarily foresee either of those two ways occurring, I kind of foresee this being he's going to keep failing, and he won't be able to actually do this, I think. But then that doesn't make sense either, because if all of time is being destroyed by this one event, there's nothing he can do. He'll just remain. He'll become a He Who Remains with nothing. So I don't necessarily see that being the solution. There is another solution which I don't like, and would be the most, I guess, terrible solution out of all the possible solutions I could think of. And that would be something along the lines of the entire multiverse has to be shredded in this way. This event has to occur, and Loki himself has to be destroyed here, and then everything itself will just reset. And that type of solution is something along the lines of you need to destroy everything, and then naturally everything will just reform, and universes will start reoccurring naturally however they're supposed to grow. And then, all the same things will occur in one of these multiverses that will just start spawning naturally from just the nothingness of time essence and space essence or whatever. It'll form universes and timelines, and then eventually one of these timelines will have an Earth and humans, and eventually one of these timelines will have a Victor Timely or a Kang or whoever, whatever name they go by. And then eventually one of these Asgards will have a Loki, this particular Loki, and a Sylvie, that particular Sylvie, and there will be a TVA, etc., leading to a He Who Remains. Meaning there has to be an event whenever a He Who Remains dies to reset it all. Wipe the entire slate clean and start back from the beginning. That could be what this is, but I don't like that option because nothing survives that. And it quite literally erases everything. The only thing that could survive that is something outside of it all, or something protected from this function that's occurring. Like some timeline that's all separate from everything else, and everything around it could be shredded and destroyed, but it's kind of like protected or safe. Or maybe something like the quantum realm, like quite literally a realm outside of everything, but since we've seen the TVA itself get destroyed, maybe that's not the case. Maybe that can't happen. Or maybe it's because the TVA is literally right next to the loom that it gets destroyed, but maybe the quantum realm is somewhere else. And it's just safe from all of this. Everything else spaghettifies, it's safe. For whatever reason. It's like far enough away from everything else, or it's like has a protective barrier around it, or whatever it might be. And simultaneously, any beings like a watcher or something like that that's outside that could be watching the entire multiverse and wouldn't be affected by anything that happens within the multiverse, those beings would be safe and fine. Whether they would step in, seeing everything before their eyes get spaghettified, maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they've seen this happen before over and over again. Everything gets spaghettified and it just comes back. And they've been watching it for infinity. But let me continue the episode. One last thing. One last thing again. Oh, don't set it down. It'll roll off the gangway. So I'm guessing in one of the many, many iterations, he put it down and it just rolled off. The rings are too small, we need to make them bigger. He's a coming, he's a coming, he's coming for Obi's job. What the shit are you doing? He knows what he's doing. At what point in time is this? Latch his helmet, don't forget. So he's fully able to just do everything. But how early is this happening? I'm guessing this isn't that much after, yeah. Everybody's there, everybody's gathered. And it didn't look like he made it himself, he probably just put the two parts together. And it'll still happen? Nope. Oh. He's able to walk out. He's being bombarded by this time radiation, but it is working. But I mean, if you made it onto the walkway and he had put down the multiplier at any point, that means he made it at least some part way out. So he's found some kind of window of opportunity where this can work. Though technically, Loki himself could go do this. But if he does and he gets spaghettified, then it's over. So at that point, he might have put it down. I'm guessing that's the point. I was wondering why they didn't show him actually putting it down and it rolling off. But that was the point, I guess. So we actually get to see him put it down. And he's loaded it in. Everything looks fine. He's pulled a lever. It turns around. And I guess all he has to do is push a button. The green button. And there we go. Does it actually work? It can be a little sticky. Oh. It fired something. I wonder if Loki's actually seen something like this happen. If it's worked before. It's gonna work this time. Does that mean this has happened before? Or has he not ever managed before to actually do it? And Timely is back. So maybe I'm completely wrong. And it'll actually work. It'll be good. Very triumphant music. The rings are expanding. Look at that. Huh. Working. That's incredible. Wait. Uh-oh. Does Loki know enough to understand that the readings are off and why they're off? Yep. Overloading again. Did it explode again? Huh. There's too many branches. I see. Well, of course they would be. It would be multiplying at an infinite rate. Time is infinitely branching, or at least it should be. You can't scale for infinite. That's what I was wondering. Like, how does it work in the beginning? Before there was one sacred timeline, how did it work? It doesn't make any sense. So this is almost like a trap. Let me pause here again at like 16 minutes in. This is quite literally like a trap. How did the multiverse exist before Kang was born? Before there was one sacred timeline? There were infinite realities. Time was constantly branching. Nothing was stopping it back then. Nothing existed back then to stop it. There couldn't have always been a He Who Remains, or else there would always have been a one sacred timeline, and there wouldn't have been a multiverse war. And there couldn't have been a multiverse war if there was always one sacred timeline, because there was no other universes. So we're trapped. We're trapped in some kind of weird paradox thing, where it's almost like a trap has been laid in such a way that you think the loom is necessary, but it's not necessary. The loom itself is the problem and the trap. If you try to fix the loom, you're not actually fixing the problem. And you need to actually break or destroy the loom. But I don't think when it looks like it explodes here, it actually breaks or destroys. Because in all the scenes that we've seen after the loom goes nuclear, it looks like it's still somewhat intact and just there. Like some device is still there. So if this loom was made by He Who Remains, in order to force the one sacred timeline from just raw time energy, then the loom itself is what's wrong. You can't have one of these things. You just need to have the multiverse forming itself. All the timelines forming themselves. I think that is the problem. That's the whole problem in the end. And that's what they need to solve. And that's what they need to realize that they need to solve. Because I don't think they realize that yet. Or at least I don't think Loki realizes that yet. So that's going to be, I think, the next thing that they'll have to deal with. I was actually almost convinced that they've managed to solve this, and then suddenly something like a He Who Remains shows up. Another one. And then that'll be the rest of the episode dealing with that. But I guess not. It does look like my original idea is true, that he'll keep trying and failing, and it just won't work. But I don't believe it can't work. It's more so that what they're trying to do was impossible from the start because it was made that way. All of this is a trap. All of this was laid down by He Who Remains, so you're just messing with them. He knows that after he dies, the loom is going to get overwhelmed because all the branches are allowed to be free because he's not physically there to give the commands to stop the prootings and all of that. Of course, with his death, the moment that he dies, the branches are free. So I'm guessing he himself personally was doing something to ensure that the multiverse was not free. And the moment he dies, whatever he was doing stops. And then that forces everything to be free. But he also knows that this loom is built in such a way that it's only meant to weave together the one sacred timeline. And it won't work for multiple branches, and the multiple branches will try to infinitely spring forth. And because of that, he knows that whoever ended up killing him will have to either deal with being spaghettified or having to fix this issue. And they'll focus on trying to fix the loom, which is just a fool's errand. It will never work. It can never be fixed. The solution is destroying the loom. Or undoing the loom. or removing it from there, disassembling it. So I'm wondering if that will be the solution. That's what they might go towards. I really don't want at this point for them to think that there's no other solution other than having a one sacred timeline, because that makes no sense, since there was not a one sacred timeline at some point in the past. In the history of the multiverse, there was a multiverse, everything was free, and there was like infinite Kangs fighting, and then one of the Kangs won and created the one sacred timeline. And I think that's what they need to realize, that the solution is not to force the one sacred timeline again, or to start pruning branches, which I don't believe they're going to go do. I'm pretty sure Sylvie is going to be vehemently against that, and I'm pretty sure Loki is going to be against that. And I'm pretty sure everybody in that room would be against something like that. Even Victor Timely, because he exists on one of the branches. He's not a part of the sacred timeline. So that's what I'm thinking will happen. They'll realize that it's the loom itself that's the problem, and they might need to remove the loom. Or at the very least, he'll need to go back in time and see who put the loom in place there, if there was always a loom or not. The only problem with that I kind of foresee is... Actually, it wouldn't be a problem. I was going to say that if the TVA existed after the loom was created, then there's no place for him to physically go. But that kind of doesn't make sense. I think the TVA had to be built first, and then from that, the loom gets built. So the TVA is put in place after Timely, or He Who Remains, does whatever he does to all of the branches, or at least all of the other Kangs. He forms the TVA, and then he puts in place the loom to just weave together the one sacred timeline. That is what I'm thinking he does. And the Alioth is probably used to prune branches before he starts getting TVA agents to start pruning them. And then he has both kind of working simultaneously, pruning branches, until he's able to build this loom that creates the one timeline, so he doesn't really have to do as much work. And while that's working in the background, creating the one sacred timeline, anything that then tries to branch from that, you have your TVA agents go and deal with. And you just have your Alioth at the end, just eating up anything that ends up there, and protecting you. Protecting the He Who Remains at the end. So let's continue the episode and see what happens. It does look like it's kind of exploding or getting real bright. Just like in the previous episode. Or not the previous episode, the episode before that. Yeah, you get to see the eruption in the background. Does he hop all the way back to when Sylvie kills He Who Remains? I think he does. That makes sense. Yep. Now he has to convince her not to kill him. At this point, he doesn't know what's to happen next. So he wouldn't have seen all of this happen. And it keeps happening over and over again. He'll have to figure out a different way to convince her to stop. Oh, he hopped back even further. And then she just kills him right then? Nope. Maybe. And he can't kill her. But every single time. Oh, this is a change. Him just asking him why he never tried to stop her. Fight back, do something. Oh. Oh, he knows about the slipping. So yet another road that he has paved. He knows about everything that happens after. He had already known he was lying back then. And I knew it. I absolutely knew he was lying. when he's like, oh, I have no idea what's gonna happen next. Of course he knew what was gonna happen next. It's probably all played out again and again and again. He's probably experienced it all. Or some predecessor of his has experienced it all. Or multiple predecessors. That's what I'm guessing. Or, of course, he's the type of being that could see into all possible futures. And then, he's seen every possible thing that'll happen. Though usually beings like that, whenever you have some situation like that, they can't see past their own death, which is weird, because it almost seems like he can, but it's also possible he's seen all the possible futures in which a time-slipping Loki has come back and told him the entire story of what's to unfold after his death, and that's how he knows about the time-slipping. Because a Loki, at some point in one of his possible futures before he gets killed, ends up telling him all of this to try to figure out how to stop Sylvie without having to kill her. Of course it wouldn't have been it. You wouldn't have just sat back and let that happen. Oh. Would you look at that? Loki pulling out that little trick there. So he can stop time. Which is completely insane. He's able to just stop time now. How is that possible? He quite literally has the power not only to time slip, but also to stop time. He's literally able to control time himself. That's just insane. I actually wonder how many, many times he's done this before. Scaling problem. Not a scaling problem. So I'm right. The loom is a failsafe and destroys all the other timelines so that there's only the one sacred timeline. And then from the one sacred timeline, if anything bubbles up, that's what the TVA agents deal with. No big deal. Easy to rebuild. So he truly believes that Loki will lose. There is no winning this. Even though he claimed in the beginning, and I knew he was lying. Well, technically he's not lying. He's like, there's only one of two outcomes. Somebody else keeps occupation of this place and does exactly what he had been doing, ensuring that no version of him ever makes it there, including that one. Or he ends up back there. Now, this is a clever way, I think, of doing it, where he's forced to end up back here because all things get destroyed if he's not back here. But it seems like it's not all things, it's all of these other branches. Or actually, it does seem like it's all things, isn't it? Because the loom is breaking. Because it's getting overloaded. And it's not doing what it originally was supposed to do. Now he's claiming that, oh, it's just an easy fix, you could just fix the loom. I'm guessing that he's talking about if Loki were to go back, he can fix the loom in such a way that it's, again, making just the one sacred timeline, and not releasing all of the branches that it had been trying to release before, or create before, or weave together before. So he's giving Loki a possible out, where, if you want, you can go to that point in time, and instead of expanding the loom, you could just fix it to operate the way it had been before, creating that one sacred timeline. I'm wondering if Loki realizes that what if you just destroy the loom? Just plain and simple. The loom being that failsafe, if you remove it, everything is fine, everything marches forward. You have to destroy it. That is the solution. If you want to let Kang die, and you want to save Sylvie, and ensure she's still alive, at whatever point in time you need to do it, the loom has to be broken or destroyed. Forget expanding the rings, just break them free. And that's the probable solution that he might go with if he's thought about that. Though he's had how many infinities to possibly think about what to do? I'm wondering how many times he's had any kind of conversation with He Who Remains, or any kind of meaningful conversation, where he gets bits and pieces of the full story. But I'm sure that He Who Remains still has tricks up his sleeve to ensure that he continues to remain. It's just weird because this entire situation, why are you letting Loki and Sylvie end up here? What is the point of allowing them all the way here and allowing one of them to kill you just to have all of this stuff play out and then for you to just be here again? What's the point of any of that? It still feels like he's looking for an out, like some other solution that he himself can't figure out, and maybe he's just tired of trying, but he knows if he lays down this path and has Loki and Sylvie show up here, Loki will get the time slipping, he'll figure out how to do all of this stuff, and then he'll just be the lab rat, trying to go back in time, go forward in time, go somewhere in time, over and over again, changing things slightly. He'll be the one to just test it all out. Maybe He Who Remains has missed something, so he's like, okay, I'll get somebody else to do it. Somebody else to check and try, to figure a way out. If they're able to, then they're able to. If they're not, well then I remain. I'm thinking that's the reason to bring Loki here, because other than that, there's no reason. You're just messing with somebody for absolutely no reason. But he doesn't seem like that type of person that's weirdly sadistic, wanting to see himself get killed over and over again, wanting to see Loki suffer for no apparent reason. He'll change the equation. He'll break the loom. Yep, so that is the solution. He does figure it out. And He Who Remains is right. Without the loom, the war begins. All the timelines are free. All of infinity is free. Is he trying to convince Loki not to break the loom? Well, obviously. But there's a bigger problem here. Let me pause again during his speech. The bigger problem is the moment you break the loom and set everything free again, the way it was originally, you have a situation where all of the Kangs are set free. They're all born whenever they're born, wherever they're born. They all go about their lives. Some of them figure out how to do the multiverse travel. Some of them do not. For the ones that do, they meet each other. Some of them want to conquer because they see that as an opportunity, and some of them don't. And then you have the situation where one of them finds the Goliath and ends up here again. And that's the situation you have to deal with. On top of all of them fighting, assuming that it's actually true that they do cause a war that drags innocent lives, entire realities, into the chaos of a war like that. Assuming that is true, which I don't necessarily believe is true. So I'll continue. And again, it's the exact same argument he had made way back with Sylvie, with both Sylvie and Loki at the beginning. At the very end of Season 1, he's basically reiterating the exact same thing. But this time, he's saying it to Loki, who's seen all of this other consequences and stuff. Without a Sylvie being there. And of course, there's no reason why there can't be a third option. And yes, it does seem like the around and around and around we go. It seems like Kang himself knows he's stuck in this loop. And now Loki's joined him. He's stuck in a loop as well. They're both stuck. But I truly believe there are other options and there are other ways out. Because if Kang is the problem, you deal with Kang. All of them. In some way. Whichever one tries to cause trouble, you deal with them. Like, if you're able to make a TVA that's able to go into all of these timelines that might branch forth from the one sacred timeline, then you can create a TVA that's sole mission is to stop all of the Kangs that try to do a thing that you know will lead to either a war or to one of them ending up in this position of power. Like, you use a TVA literally to stop that, instead of the way Kang has been using it. That's almost what I see happening. That you quite literally do that. Or, another solution that I had, and I'm pretty sure said this in a previous video, you make a change to how reality works, and before I didn't know if that was something that could have been even possible. But if you're able to build a loom that's able to weave time into just one sacred timeline instead of having a multiverse, then you could build something else that coats all of the multiverse, every single branch, in some sort of thing that prevents multiverse travel. And then you've automatically just stopped all of that. If Kang can never figure out or invent a way to do multiverse travel because you've built in a rule into reality itself, into the grand scheme of all things, that multiverse travel can't happen, or is too difficult a problem for Kang to solve, then you've essentially stopped him. And he will never find multiverse travel. He'll continue on with his life, doing whatever science he had been doing, and then that's it. You have no war, you have no Kang, you have no He Who Remains. It's just Victor Timely, or whichever name he goes by, in whichever reality, doing their science and doing their thing. Maybe he figures out time travel, but that won't necessarily help or change anything. Unless he goes all the way back to the beginning or something like that, and then undoes the change somehow. But I don't see something like that necessarily happening, and that would get way, way too complex. And of course he's trying to egg Loki onto killing Sylvie, which I don't foresee happening at all, because he knows that's not the right move. He knows that freedom is better than this dictatorship that Kang is offering. And of course, Kang used the words, make the easy choice, or make the hard choice, and break the loom. Or, and that or is basically him saying, make the easy choice. And remember Loki's words, like 2 or 3 episodes ago to Sylvie. Staying and fighting to protect the freedom of the multiverse is the hard choice. It's easy to run away. It's easy to just kill. It's easy to just, do whatever and then leave it. It's hard to stay and to fight and to keep fighting. And that's the choices that Kang is giving Loki. And I don't think Loki is going to take the easy way out of this. I don't see that happening after everything that's happened. I don't see it happening. He could Groundhog Day himself infinite times over. He, I think, will continue to try to find another option or another way to ensure that everything's okay. Oh, now it's back to Loki talking with Mobius. He's hopped into himself back then. How much is he changing? How do you choose who lives and who dies? It's going to be an interesting one to see Mobius try to answer. You're not going to find comfort in the TVA. Which hunter is he talking about that hesitated and paused to prune 8-year-old? You gotta keep the big picture in mind. Is Mobius talking about himself? It's Ravonna. There's a big problem with all of this, and that's the version of Mobius he's asking these questions to. The one that still believes in the TVA's purpose and its way of doing things. And he's almost convincing himself that the harder thing to do would be to create the one sacred timeline again. And to keep things as is, instead of letting everything be free. Which I think is a mistake, and the wrong way of looking at things. I'm hoping that he goes and asks somebody else or gets other perspectives, but I don't know if he will. It's getting somewhat worrisome, but I don't. There's still like half an episode left. You just have to choose your burden. And Mobius spaghettifies in front of him, as everything else does. Oh. He just lets it happen. And he's just standing there in nothingness? And then we're seeing everybody else spaghettify as well. And he pauses it all. This is back in the previous episode. I guess he could just... This is insane. This is an insane power. He just pause all things around him. So I'm guessing he wants to go back and talk to this Sylvie before she gets spaghettified as well, and before he had just learned to use his time-slipping abilities in this moment. Because she's the last person to get spaghettified here. And I'm guessing he kind of intentionally waited until the rest were spaghettified just to talk to her. Again, this is creating weird loop issues with time, especially within the TVA. Because we've seen these events play out before, but I guess it doesn't matter, because these are little branches in time that are popping up, and then getting spaghettified at some point. Because everything ends up getting spaghettified at some point, because a loom is still in place. So these branches can't propagate forward anymore. They go up to a certain point, and then they all stop. So I'm guessing all of these are little bubble, or not bubble, just little strands or branches from everything, from the TVA's timeline, from any branch timeline's timeline, from the sacred timeline's timeline, all of it. Oh, he kind of undid it all. And she figures it out almost immediately. But there is another option. She's making a very good point, because even within the sacred timeline, the one sacred timeline, it's not necessarily perfect or good. The He Who Remains at the top of it all is allowing, death, destruction, hardship, negative things, terrible things to happen. Even though that being has the power to just not have any of that happen. But at the same time, you have to live with the fact that there will be a dictator dictating all of it above it all, which is wrong. Now she's saying, do you want to be the god to take away everybody's free will to protect that? And she is absolutely right, that with a He Who Remains at the top, there is technically no free will. It's all predetermined by that being. Technically, there's no free will the other way either. It's just all random infinite branches. But at the very least, there's no being at the very top dictating and controlling it all. Whatever happens will just randomly happen. All the dice will roll, and whichever version of you ends up wherever it ends up, that's where it ends up. On whatever branch you end up being on, in whatever infinite version that you is. That one will end up wherever it ends up, a different one will end up in a slightly different place, or maybe even the same place, but one molecule in that universe isn't just in a slightly different energy position, or whatever it might be. Completely different reality, but only different because one molecule moved left instead of right. Or one electron was in one energy state versus a different energy state, or something like that. And what good is free will if everyone's dead? But that's the thing. Not everyone has to die. Yes, if you keep the loom in place, everything will spaghettify, but if you break the loom, it won't. And of course, who are you to decide we can't die fighting? And I like that mentality because they are quite literally fighting for the freedom of everything. And Loki, I think, basically says that too himself. She's just reiterating it back to him. And she does have a very unique perspective, having to live through entire apocalypses to hide within those apocalypses. Where does he hop to? He hops back to the point where Timely puts his head in the device, and it reads his time signature. Didn't expect this. I thought he would hop back to the very end. But maybe not. His last lines were, "What if you could replace it with something better?" What is his plan here? I almost see it... No. Like I was gonna say, what if he takes Victor Timely and puts him in that place, but that won't work. Or what if he takes himself and puts himself in a place at the end of time in that castle and just remains there. He quite literally remains there himself, but with a free multiverse, without any loom. But I don't see that fixing the problem because eventually Timely will find an Alioth, or one of the variants of Kang will find one, and end up there anyways, and probably try to kill Loki. It'll just be the exact same thing, but somebody wanting to create a sacred timeline and put order to all the chaos will show up to challenge the person who's there, who's keeping everything free. So that's just a completely different loop. So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to play out. He's going down the stairs himself. Without a suit? Oh, he's just going to use his powers to open the door. He could probably survive this, couldn't he? With his ability to manipulate time and everything. That time radiation might not necessarily affect him. Oh, that is so cool. As he's walking along the pathway, and his clothes get ripped open, or ripped off. His Loki costume shows up. Oh, that's so cool. With the horns and everything. And he's going to use his powers to destroy the loom. Weird webbed string thing showed up. Don't know what that is. That looks dark and dangerous. Threads of time? Realities? I'm glad he didn't end up dead from doing this. Oh, he could grab one. Didn't expect that to happen either. The branches of what are dying? Are these the branches of time? And is he healing it? Maybe this is some next level. Oh, that's a place at the end of time. He's freed time and he's just gonna go there. Though I think Sylvie still has the ability to go there and see him. I would assume it's the exact same place and time, so she should be able to just hop to that end castle place and just go see him. But this scene was amazing, absolutely amazing. And her saying he's giving us a chance. I assume that's exactly what he's doing as he's walking forward right now. He's trying to heal all of these branches of time. Though I'm surprised that they even need healing. Though maybe that's yet another failsafe. If the loom gets destroyed, the energy it releases starts decaying the branches. And it looks like the branches are all weaved into his cape. Oh, this is just incredible. The chair remains, all the gold things come onto it. Him with all the branches sitting in that chair. He's quite literally having to hold it all together. And it does look like a tree. That is absolutely beautiful. So cool. This episode is amazing. after. I guess everyone in the TVA just has to keep doing stuff. Oh, you see it in the background. The monitor has completely changed and it looks like a tree now. I guess they revived Miss Minutes. Gonna try to kill us all? No. Oh well. Hopefully she doesn't, though she might have some plans in place. And Mobius is back at his desk. And that's exactly what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing. They're monitoring He Who Remains. All the variants of him. That is what the TVA has changed into. And they name drop 616, of course. Say your file AI requested? Who? Not entirely sure what that means. I have to look into that after. Oh yes, there would be TVA agents that don't know Mobius is leaving. I really didn't see that coming, to be fair. I honestly expected Mobius to have stayed. And led the TVA, honestly. But B-15 is a good person as well. To be that. To be the leader. Though there's a few people that we haven't seen yet. At least, well, Casey seems to be at the meeting. At whatever this meeting is. Obi seems to be doing what Obi had always been doing. Where is Sylvie? Though it is nice if Mobius properly gets to retire and live the life that he's always wanted to live. It's somewhat sad to see that happen. But also, it's a good thing. Ah, and Obi's written new manuals. I assume they're new ones. Because they're more yellow colored than orange. Oh, they're gonna change it. And this time Victor Timely doesn't get the TVA handbook. Though Ravona still exists? I guess they kinda had to undo everything. Or maybe Loki had to undo everything. Where is she? There's a pyramid in the background, and she's in a field. Is this the place at the end of time? Or is this just on Earth somewhere? It almost looks like it's the place at the end of time. Yeah, the Eliath is there. Now we see some variant or version of Mobius playing with his kids. And yeah, Mobius himself looking at that, seeing what life he could have had, or what life he once had. And Sylvie shows up. What is their plan now? Because Mobius clearly can't go back into that particular life. There's already a Mobius there. He'll have to find the exact place where he got plucked from. And I don't entirely know what Sylvie's planning to do. I guess he ended up having to just sit there forever now. It's kind of a weird ending, but I get that it kind of has to be this way. I kind of expected Sylvie to stay with the TVA and continue to work to ensure that none of the He Who Remains remains. Or none of the Victor Timely's end up becoming a He Who Remains. Loki's quite literally holding everything together. It's nice that he's able to see everybody. It sucks that he's not able to be there with them or have a life of his own. It almost seems like that's what they all should be working towards. Figuring out a way to free him from what he has to do from that place that he's at. I almost see like that being a thing that they should be doing. Because they know, I think, that he's just kind of stuck there. And That's not an ideal place for him to necessarily be. That's not necessarily what he wants, and he's quite literally doing that so that they might be free. It almost seems like it's odd for them to just let it be like that and move on with their lives instead of trying to help him not have to be stuck there. You know what I mean? But I guess this is the proper ending until some He Who Remains ends up making it to a point where they could actually usurp that throne. Though I don't know. Almost seems like a bookend to the multiverse. Like, this is the ending. Like, this is after everything. Like, this is how it should end. At After the Multiverse Wars and Kang Dynasty and all the upcoming movies, after all of that, this is how it should be. And it almost doesn't make sense with the stuff that happens in Ant-Man and the stuff I assume that's going to be happening in other movies that a Kang character is within. Because if you keep that character and if you keep trying to use that storyline, it almost doesn't make sense because now if the TVA is working in the background to stop all of them everywhere, there can't be any to make it to any point. There can't be that Council of Kangs, there can't be that one in Quantumania. None of them would have made it to any of that point if you stop them all. Unless they're letting them live and do whatever they do, as long as they don't try to conquer all of the multiverse. And it's like they might be bad guys within any particular universe, but as long as they stay to their universe, or maybe even they're able to hop between universes or timelines, but as long as they don't try to usurp everything, then they're just left alone. But the moment they try to make moves to go for that throne, then they're stopped. Though that does seem somewhat dangerous, because any Kang that's at that point seems to have the technology, or might have the technology, to be able to fight like on par with the TVA agents. So you'd need some of the best agents possible to be able to deal with that. I almost feel like you can have another season now because of the way they ended it. It would kind of suck if this was it and Loki is stuck there forever until some Kang variant shows up, and then Sylvie just continues living her life instead of doing anything else to either help him ensure no other Kangs exist. Like, if she still has that watch, that Chempad watch, that is able to let her travel through different time, space, which I assume is how she got to where Mobius is, then she could kinda go where Loki is and see him at any point in time. But not only that, she could also go and ensure that, she personally stops any Kang that might threaten the multiverse. So I assume that's kind of what she's probably going to be doing. She did appear in her... I think she appeared in her regular clothes, right? Not any kind of TVA clothes, not any kind of... Let me go back real quick. Yeah, it's just her regular clothes. But I mean, she's not going to be the person to try to stop Mobius from quitting or living his life the way he wants to, because she wants everybody to have a choice and to have freedom. And Loki wanted that as well for everybody. So that's the other side of the coin. When you have a hero type individual who does a thing or sacrifices themselves in such a way that everybody else is happy, but they're not. But some people, or at least most people that are close to them, know that they made the sacrifice for everybody else. What do you do at that moment? Do you accept what they've done and try to live, your best life, be as happy as possible because of what they've done? Or do you try to find a way to ensure that they can also be happy? To ensure that they also have that same opportunity? Like, there must be another option. I don't think the multiverse before all of this stuff happened with Kang, before all of this stuff with Loki, needed some being there to kind of hold it all together. I don't think it needed that, or required anything like that. The only reason why it needs that now is because of everything that Kang had done, and the mess he had created, and the traps he had set. So it almost seems like not the best ending, but it also almost seems like there's going to be more to this story. But we'll have to wait and see if they're going to announce a season 3, or if any of these characters are going to end up in any of the movies going forward. It really does look like Mobius is kind of done. His character is done. It looks like Ravonna is dead, but she might not necessarily be. And of course, there will probably be variants of her scattered throughout Infinity. So the main question is all of the main characters that we've been following so far. Like, Loki is probably some timeless being that's just holding all of reality together, all of the multiverse. So he'll always be there. There is a chance for any of the characters in the entire MCU to end up there and meet him at some point. Then for Sylvie, like, what is she planning to do? Is she going to go back to find a McDonald's and just live out her life? Is she going to continue fighting the way she's always been fighting? Is she going to try to figure out a way to free Loki from that burden? Is she going to just hunt down any Kangs that seem to be causing trouble, but be separate from the TVA? Is she actually part of the TVA, but we haven't seen that? I don't know what that's gonna look like. They could just end her character here and have her go off and live a peaceful life, whatever life she wants to live. So, can any of these characters really live and be happy knowing what Loki has done? Or will that always be rattling around in the back of their mind? It's almost like they can't necessarily. Like, on the one hand, okay, you could just accept that they've done this for you and try to live the best life you can. But you'll always know, you'll always remember what they've done for you, and that they're still there doing it. That they're out there somewhere forever doing that. And yes, they have the entire TVA trying to help and ensure that everything's fine and the Kangs are all stopped. But you still have him stuck there. And you know it. And even if none of the TVA agents can actually hop to that point in time, or that place, which is just basically a floating rock with a throne on it, or a chair, it's not even a throne. Sylvie is one of the only people who can hop there. And she could go there and keep his company at the very least. But I don't know. It would have kind of been nice if at the very end, after the credits, that's exactly what happens. But I kind of see this as almost unfinished. At the very least for Loki himself, this particular Loki. This doesn't seem like the proper ending. And because of this ending that was given, I don't necessarily see how the rest of the MCU is going to go moving forward. because this almost seems like you could put this ending at the very end after Kang Dynasty, after all of the Kang stuff is dealt with. Because it seems like this deals with all of the Kang stuff. Now, if the MCU wants to, and they want to just move away from all the Kang, Multiverse War, all of it, they've just done it. They've dealt with that in Loki Season 2, and all of the movies going forward could just be something different. And rename Kang Dynasty, not have it be anything to do with Kang, or maybe have those movies take place before all of this. So you could see what happened during that multiverse war. You could actually show a multiverse war happening. And it'll be before, in the before times. Before all this stuff with the TVA and the Loki and the Sylvie and all of that. And of course, you still have the TVA operating, even if Mobius isn't there. You still have B-15, you still have Casey, and you still have Obi. So, and you have Miss Minutes just floating about, which is probably not the best idea, but there is still potential for a continuation, for another season, to look at what will happen next with the TVA, with the He Who Remains. It does feel like if they want to continue with He Who Remains and Kang, they'll need some movie somewhere along the lines to set up another Kang. We could assume that Quantumania has already done that, and that's the one that will become He Who Remains. And we'll need to get to the point where that Kang is such a threat that the TVA can't handle it either, and that there's nothing they can do to stop that particular one from getting to where Loki is. And that will immediately need other characters to come to his aid and to stop that from happening. But there also needs to be a solution to stop having Loki just sit there for all eternity, for the entire age of the multiverse. You kind of need that to happen. So, I don't know. I don't exactly know how that's going to happen. But I guess we will see in the future of the MCU and all the movies that are coming out. I know that the Marvels has come out. I probably won't be seeing that for quite some time. It's cold outside. I'll probably wait on that one, even though I don't want to. But I don't think I know anybody who actually wants to go other than me. I don't want to go alone in the cold. But, or maybe I'll end up seeing it at some point sooner. But I think we have some time before the next thing happens. It does feel a little bit like Loki just ends and all of a sudden the Marvels start off. So I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know if it's going to have anything to do with Kang in any way, or it's just not going to have that. I'm guessing that it probably won't, but that's just a complete guess without knowing anything other than watching the trailers for the Marvels. Yeah, it almost seems like they're trying to force an ending with some of these characters. Like, almost. But it's not... It doesn't seem to fit the way that the characters are, because I know Mobius is very caring, but it almost seems like the reason why he's quitting is because of what happened with Loki. And he almost feels like, in my mind, it seems like what he's thinking is, you know, I can't continue to work at the TVA knowing that Loki is in the position that he's in, and he's stuck the way that he's stuck, having to sacrifice himself in that way. But I also can't continue living knowing or not knowing what my life could have been, unless this version of Mobius remembers what his life once was, and misses that, or wants to experience that again, or something along those lines. And that's why he's doing this. And he also knows that Loki sacrificed himself so that they have the opportunity to do this. So he doesn't want to, you know, he doesn't want to let Loki's sacrifice go to waste in that way. But I also don't see him being the type of character to just sit here and try to live a life knowing that there could be something that he could do. It doesn't seem like he's that type of character. But we also have to remember that he's the more cerebral, slow approach type guy. So maybe he just needs a change of pace, change of scenery, try to think outside the box a little bit, to try to figure out what to do next. I kind of don't want to see this to being the ending of his character. And the same with Sylvie. I don't think she's the type of character to just leave this be. And I don't think she's the type of character that'll be necessarily happy just walking away from all of this and retiring or finding a job, going back to McDonald's, whatever her choice might be. Just living a regular life. I don't see that necessarily happening. And on top of that, she has the TemPad watch thing that can allow her to travel literally anywhere in all of the entire multiverse, including where Loki is currently. So I also see it not really being an ending for her character. And then for Obi, Casey, and B-15 that are still a part of the TVA, if we ever see the TVA again, we'll see them again. They're continuing to work at the TVA. It doesn't look like any of them are planning to just leave or retire. So whenever we do see the TVA again, we will just see them again. If we ever see the TVA again, and I'm hoping we do. Um, yeah, I don't know if Ravonna is dead. Kinda looks like her character's dead now. But again, I don't think it necessarily matters because some other He Who Remains Kang will find a Ravonna and do all the same things that he had done with that other one. And then just end up back in the same place, or at least try to. And I'm thinking that's the important bit. It almost feels like we're going to see the reality in which Loki and Sylvie hasn't done anything yet. And none of that stuff has played out yet. And we'll see how Kang had continued doing his stuff, continued building his technology, fighting his war, and ending up finding the Goliath. We'll see all of that play out throughout the next few movies, or at least some of the next few movies leading up to Kang Dynasty, where we'll see him finally conquering all of the other Kangs, and then at some point in there, we'll see the TVA and Loki and all of that. That all of that has been. Or actually, no, we won't see that because that hasn't happened yet. We'll see all of the stuff with Kang play out as it was supposed to get a He Who Remains at the end. We'll see that Kang find the Goliath. We'll see him beating the rest of the Kangs and getting to that end place. And we'll see him setting up the TVA the very first time. We'll see him building the loom. All of that happening. And then we'll have a recap of everything that happened in Loki. And then we end it all. And that's it. That's the end. But I don't like that ending, so I don't think that'll happen that way. I don't think that's necessarily good enough. Because having a Loki in that position is just wrong. And not wrong because Loki's a bad guy or a bad character. He has grown and changed to such a degree that he's willing to sacrifice everything to physically hold together all of time-space so that a multiverse can exist. But there needs to be a way for him to not have to be there. For there to be no one needing to be there. For the multiverse to just flourish and be fine on its own. And for him to be able to live his life. And that's what I think the end will be. A solution for both of those problems. Because it almost seems like there's only 3 possible solutions. The one solution is have a He Who Remains and a One Sacred Timeline. The other solution is have everything spaghettified. And the third solution, which is the one we've seen play out here at the end of Loki Season 2, is to have the loom destroyed without everything being spaghettified and somebody holding it all together at the end. And ensuring that Kangs don't end up there. But I don't think that Kang didn't know that this is also a solution. He must have known that this is also a possible solution, and he must know that he still manages to conquer even with this being in place. He still managed to get back there. Because all he has to do is kill Loki and then put a loom in place, and he succeeded. And re-brainwash the TVA, or rebuild a new TVA. Whichever. And then the loop starts all over again. So I think this is still part of that loop. It's not over. This isn't an end. This is yet another stage on a different loop that we're on. Or the same loop, we just didn't know all the main stages that are supposed to happen. You know, you find an Alioth, you defeat all the other Kangs, you build a TVA, you build a loom, you become a He Who Remains, a Loki ends up there, a Loki learns there's time slipping and how to control it. He has a choice to make. No matter what choice he makes, he'll still end up there eventually. Whether he decides to destroy everything, whether he decides to kill Sylvie, whether he decides to put himself on that throne and just hold everything together. Eventually a Kang will spring forward that the TVA can't deal with, will find the Alioth, will end up at that point. And the cycle repeats. Now, one other failsafe, which would be really cool, is the Alioth also knowing who Ravonna is, or her being able to control it in some way. Because in that scene, we don't actually get to see her die. It's possible that even if she doesn't remember it, because we know she doesn't remember anything, it's possible that the Alioth was tamed by both of them. It could respond to both of them. Which means that she's in the perfect place to, if she's able to, bring the Alioth to Kang or wait there to gift him this thing. Which is extremely dangerous. And basically sets up Kang's ascent. It's like, what role did Ravonna play in Kang's ascent to becoming He Who Remains? It seemed like, at least from Miss Minutes, that she did a lot to ensure that Kang ends up there. And if that's true, then it could be she's one of the reasons why he has the Alioth. Or she could end up fulfilling that role as one of the reasons why he has the Alioth. So that's kind of my predictions going forward. Kind of how I see it all play out. That Ravonna doesn't necessarily die. She's set up in the right place to be, so that the Alioth can end up with Kang. And I also see Sylvie not necessarily retiring, and ending up fighting against the various Kangs as well. And or fighting alongside the TVA, being a part of the TVA, or trying to figure out a way to help Loki. That's what I kind of see for her character, and Mobius, I think the same for him, to be honest. Now, in reality, I don't know if the actor playing Mobius is done with the role and wants to just move on from this, and doesn't necessarily want to do anything going forward. I don't know if the actor for Sylvie wants that or not. I don't know if the actor for Loki is planning to retire and won't necessarily be in any of the upcoming movies. But with him being in this position, it almost looked like he has to at least appear or cameo again. And I don't see it necessarily being a proper ending either, where at the end of everything, it's just going to be Loki sitting there holding everything together. That seems wrong to me. So, yeah, those are just some of my thoughts. Maybe I'll make another video sometime later on, once I've had time to sit with it, maybe rewatch the entire series, season 1 and 2. It was definitely an amazing episode. I really, really enjoyed it. It just left me feeling like there has to be more after this. This can't be it. And I have a feeling it's probably left a lot of people feeling that way, or at least I hope it does, because it doesn't seem like an ending. And I know it's part of the MCU. There's going to be more with multiverse and with Kang and with all of this stuff, but for these particular characters, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the end yet. But I get that some types of shows and movies tend to end like this, where it's like how Iron Man sacrifices himself in the end, and technically Black Widow and original Gamora also sacrificed themselves in order for Thanos to be defeated. Like, each of those sacrifices ended up happening such that Thanos ended up being defeated. And it almost feels like that sort of ending, where Tony has to snap and disappear, or at least he has to snap and kill himself. He has to sacrifice his life in order for everybody else to be happy and continue living. And without that, it wouldn't have happened. It seems like the same sort of situation where Loki has to kind of sacrifice himself and get stuck in this position. He's not dead, but he's essentially, unable to move or be free or do anything anymore. Be with his friends, be happy. Now, I know it kind of seems like, okay, he'll be able to watch over everybody, and he'll see that everybody's happy, and that'll make him happy. But it's wrong. It feels wrong, right? It doesn't feel like it's fair. And sure, you could say life's not fair, the multiverse is unforgiving. There had to be a sacrifice somewhere for everybody to keep their freedom. But this type of sacrifice doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel like it'll work in the end. It doesn't seem like this will be enough to stop Kang. And I know it shows like Victor Timely, the book was supposed to be dropped there and it doesn't get dropped there. And okay, that deals with Kang. And they talk about, all these other Kangs, one did a thing, so you have to deal with that, whatever. But again, if Kangs are able to operate freely, and I'm pretty sure they are to some degree, then at one point, they're going to miss a Kang, or Miss Minutes is going to set up a scenario where they'll miss a Kang that will end up with all the right things that they need to end up being He Who Remains. And the only way he'll be able to do that is to kill Loki. Or go at Loki. Or usurp all of it from Loki, somehow. Which is probably kill him. It's probably just straight up kill him or imprison him. So, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good enough ending. Like, it felt like a really good ending. But it's still wrong. It's still missing. It's still missing the proper ending. Plus, with Loki in place like that, it almost seems kind of broken, where, you'll always have a being that maybe is killable, maybe he's not killable anymore, maybe he's just a timeless entity at the end of time there. But it almost seems like it's possible to mess with that, or interfere with that. Any being of a certain capability, or greater being, it almost seems like they can end up at that position and threaten everything. Like, if you distract Loki enough from holding on to all things and keeping it together, You know, if he has to let go of something to protect himself or to deal with somebody showing up there, what happens? Does it all start to die or disintegrate? Because that's not a solution. If Loki's not timeless, or if Loki doesn't have infinite energy, can he keep doing what he's doing? Can he sleep? Can he eat? Can he rest? It doesn't seem like a solution. And there had to have been a way, before all the Kangs, before all the Lokis, before it all, when the multiverse was in the before times, where it was functioning as a proper multiverse without a loom and without a Loki in place. There had to have been a point in time where that was occurring. Before the very first Kang ever managed to conquer anything, there had existed a multiverse. How was that being held together? You could try to loop it in on itself and Ouroboros it and say that, well, there was always a Loki or there was always a Kang, and there was no other. There's no other choice. Either there's nothingness, a Loki, or Kang. I don't buy that or believe that. And they'd have to explicitly say that in some way for me to believe that. But I think I'll end this episode here. And yeah, I might make another episode with other thoughts if I have any. I'll probably now just look online and see what people think and feel and stuff. And if I want to comment on those things, I'll probably make another video to comment on other people's comments and thoughts and all of that. And we'll see where that goes. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. And leave a like if you managed to make it this far. Subscribe. The usual things. Maybe leave a comment saying what you thought of Loki Season 2 up till now. Or the entire Loki series. How you feel the multiverse saga of the MCU is going. Movies that you like, didn't like, shows that you like, didn't like, why, all of that stuff. Don't do any spoilers for Miss Marvel, or the Marvels, I mean. And yeah, I think I'll end it here.